Simcha, celebration, Simcha, Simcha, celebration of life.
Welcome to Simcha, a celebration of life. I'm your host, Eitan Berger. In 1946, Chief Rabbi Yitzchak Halevi Herzog bought land in Jerusalem with the wish of building the seat of the chief rabbinate. The British Jewish philanthropist Sir Isaac Wolfson shared this dream and, in 1958, facilitated the construction of Hechel Shlomo in order to serve as the spiritual and religious center for the Jewish people and the chief rabbinate. Hechel Shlomo houses the Wolfson Museum of Jewish Art, with a unique collection of Jewish ceremonial art. Most of the exhibited items have a distinctive story behind them and range from unique archaeological objects and artistic gems to mundane items and original documents, as well as valuable religious artifacts.
The Wolfson Museum of Jewish Art, called the Hechel Shlomo Museum, is actually one of the top 10 collections of Jewish art in the world. It has 4,000 objects in its collections that started actually when this building was inaugurated in 1958. The ideas of the founders of this museum was that art is an integral part of Jewish life and culture. And since this building historically was the building of the chief rabbinate, the people that donated, the Wolfson family, felt that art, collecting Jewish art and artifacts and ceremonial Jewish art pieces, was an integral and an important part of the whole Jewish existence. Throughout the years, other collections were added to this museum, and today this museum is actually going into a new phase. When I started curating this museum about 4 years ago, my vision was to make it relevant, contemporary, and interesting for the Israeli and the general community and society to come and visit. And what I tried to do here is to actually interface and interact between the ancient historical Jewish art and the contemporary, living, vibrant art, and to see the inner content and the dialogues that can be created between them. The museum now, since I've been here, is built on an idea of the dialogue between the individual and the community. The name of the whole presentation here is The Secret of the One and the Oneness, meaning the individual and the oneness that is created when people are connected together and they become one in their ideologies and their ideas, even though they stay separate and individual in different behaviors or in their different lifestyles. When we think about it even one step deeper, the one that we're talking about is also the one, Hashem, God, that He is actually the unifying force of all the universe with all the different and multifaceted interactions within it. So the exhibition in the museum is built around rooms that concentrate on the community and the togetherness, and rooms that are concentrated on the individual contribution. Like, for example, this room that we are sitting in is actually the true and historical study of Rabbi Herzog that initiated this building in the first place. He was the first Ashkenazi chief rabbi of the state of Israel, and he started even before that being a rabbi in Ireland and in England. His mission after the Holocaust was to find Jewish children that were put in different institutions of other religions and reconnect them back into Judaism. And he did magnificent and very, very big projects. In this museum, one of the most important objects that we have is a talit attributed to the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, the founder of the Hasidic movement in the 17th century. We also have evidence, historical evidence, that this piece of textile was actually given as an inheritance, generation after generation, from the Baal Shem Tov to his great-grandson, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. Eventually, it came to the Hechel Shlomo Museum through one of his great-great-grandchildren, descendants, and they donated it to this museum. When we talk about individual contribution to the Jewish community, we have very, very important objects in this museum. One of them is a set of objects that belonged to Yosef Mendelevich, that was one of the Jewish people that were arrested in Russia for many, many years just because they wanted to be Jewish and to come to Israel. Yosef Mendelevich made in the Russian prison for himself a prayer shawl, a talit, that he managed to make out of unbelievable pieces that aren't originally parts of a talit, but he made it for himself. He made a kippah, which is the special head cap that represents the fear from God, and he made it out of pieces of cloth that he found in the prison. We also have in our museum a prayer book that he made for himself in a little matchbox in his own handwriting. He wrote out prayers and he hid them in a matchbox.
The Wolfson Museum of Jewish Art houses what is considered to be amongst the world's finest collection of Judaica, presenting permanent and temporary exhibitions on Jewish identity and culture. All the exhibitions in the museum share a conceptual narrative, the one and oneness, interpreting Jewish life as a delicate and intricate tapestry of relations between the individual and the community.
In this museum, we also have a very, very moving piece that is a tiny Torah ark that actually housed a miniature Torah scroll that survived the Holocaust in the terrible place called Bergen-Belsen. And it was actually owned by a rabbi that smuggled it in, endangering his life, into the death camp, because he knew that the source of life, of Jewish life, is the connection and the living connection to the Torah, the text that we believe that was written and transferred from the creator of the universe, from God, through Moses in the Mount Sinai revelation to the Jewish people, and through the Jewish people to all humanity. The Torah is the essence of our life. The Rabbi Dasberg, Shimon Dasberg, saw a little boy of 12 years old going to be bar mitzvah, going to have his 13th birthday. And from that day on, the rabbi woke him up every day, sometime between midnight and 4 o'clock in the morning, and sat with this miniature Sefer Torah scroll, and taught him to read the special portion of the week in which he was born. When the big day came for the bar mitzvah to happen, all the people in that ward participated in this beautiful and happy moment. After he read the Torah so beautifully, and everybody was so inspired and invigorated by the spirituality of connecting to the Torah, the rabbi took him aside and said to him these very awesome words. He said, "You are young, you have a good chance to survive." He said about himself, the rabbi said, he's not sure he's going to make it. And therefore, he wants to give this child the inheritance of generations, this very important Sefer Torah. And he just asked this boy to promise him two things, that he will guard it and he will tell the story. 2 months later, the rabbi actually passed on, left this world, and the child remained and protected the Sefer Torah as the most precious object of his life. The Holocaust ended, the war ended, and this child started his journey back to life. We also have a full, beautiful presentation in a special exhibition that was created here in the museum. This exhibition is called Vilna as a Metaphor to the Jewish Existence. And in the center of this exhibition is 400 Torah scrolls that were reunited to the Jewish people after surviving the Holocaust and being hidden in Lithuania for over a decade. We have here now in this museum a few exhibitions that incorporate young artists. This was very, very important for me to bring in young people that have new inspirations and new perspectives on Judaism. We had here a group of art students from the top art schools all over Israel, the Bezalel Academy of Art, the Hadassah Academy of Art, photography schools, painting and drawing schools, even a school for cinema, for making films. And they had a whole program around the year that they were exposed and taught about Jewish ideas, Jewish values, Jewish history, and Jewish inspiration. And their end-of-year project was to make pieces of art that reflected their own personal emotion about Judaism and about interacting with other objects in this museum, the Hechel Shlomo Museum. So they came up with beautiful, beautiful pieces that they called it My Own Prayer. And every artist actually made a piece that interacts with other pieces. So this very beautiful, modern and contemporary piece of this art student that I love so much, Ariel is the name of the artist, he made a very abstract work that is just a white canvas with 3 stripes of black paint on it. And for me it is so meaningful because this says that it's a prayer. It looks like prayer shawl. It interacts with Rabbi Herzog's historical research about the thread of the prayer shawl. It interacts with the historical Baal Shem Tov historical prayer shawl. It interacts with the prayer shawl that was done in the Russian prison. And it interacts with the prayer shawl that we also have here that was saved from fire, from a burning synagogue in the Holocaust. It was also saved from war, from sword, when the owner of this talit was in the area around Jerusalem, right when the state of Israel was starting to be founded and there were terrible wars. So this prayer shawl that survived, and it is hanging here with the handwriting of the granddaughter of the owner, this modern work interacts with it so, so beautifully. We also have another show winded between the other shows here of the exhibitions, a beautiful show that I called In the Eyes of the Other. And what I tried to do in this exhibition was actually to inspire artists to look at some kind of an other, to speak about otherness, if it's gender otherness, men and women, if it's religion otherness, if it's perspectives of life otherness, and to try to show how the other can be actually interpreted not as something that is against me or beyond me or different to me, but something that is an inspiration for me. And my mission is actually to show that in this world that was created by one creator, we can all find the mutual grounds, we can all find the way to respect the other as he is, and to embrace him and to receive him and to actually look at him with positive eyes and not with different eyes.
The Renanim Synagogue in Hechel, Shlomo, is a small synagogue of singular beauty, lavishly decorated in an Italian style of the 18th century. For over 300 years, it served one of the communities of Padua, Italy. Unfortunately, with the dwindling of the Jewish communities in northern Italy, as well as their subsequent immigration to Israel, the synagogue was transferred to Hechel, Shlomo, where it now serves an active community and is open to the general public.
This beautiful historical synagogue is actually part of the Hechel Shlomo Museum of Jewish Art, named after the Wolfson family. They actually built the museum as an integral part of this historical building when it just started in the 1950s, and they had a vision that Jewish art is actually part of a full vision of Jewish culture and Jewish tradition in a beautiful, beautiful way. The beautiful Aron Kodesh, the Torah Ark, and the beautiful Bima were actually brought over from Italy from the 18th century. This Torah Ark has a very interesting history. It was actually in the Sephardi synagogue of Padua, in which the Ramchal, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, was the rabbi for tens of years. After his passing, many of the Aronot Kodesh of Italy were brought over to Israel in the 1950s as part of a shipment of other Torah arks that were brought to different synagogues around Israel. All of them were brought to Israel by a very interesting man called Umberto Nachon, and he had this mission to save the Italian synagogues and to bring them to Israel. This Aron Kodesh was made in Italy in the 18th century, where the high Baroque style was all over the world. So in this Aron Kodesh, we see a very interesting use of gold leaf and deep embossing of the techniques and the styles of the time. And if you look closely and carefully at this Aron Kodesh, it's asymmetrical. You have flowers here and flowers there, but they're not the same flowers. You have like a rose and you have a daisy, and they have an interaction between them, but they're not stiff, symmetrical pieces, but they have this flowing life feeling to them. And I think it so much is in one line with Judaism, that Judaism is always very attentive to what is happening in reality. In synagogues, we have actually three major styles. We have the Ashkenazi synagogue that is frontal, that we have the Bima and the Aron Kodesh at the front of the synagogue. We have the Sephardi structure of the synagogue that is more community style, that is around, that the people sit facing each other. And there is the Italian side combination that is a combination of both. And in this synagogue, we see all these different aspects coming together. This very, very special bima that we see here is beautiful also in the high Baroque style. And it has beautiful Italian decorations to it that are a wonderful inspiration for prayer. when this synagogue was inaugurated in the late 1950s, it also had a very important artwork of David Hillman, which is a stained glass window artist from London. In London, he made a few very, very important synagogues, sometimes with over 100 stained windows in them. And in this little synagogue, we have a line of beautiful vitrages that show the high holidays of the year. And through these glass stained windows, you can see that he was not only an artist, but he was also a Talmid Chacham. He was a Jewish scholar. He knew a lot about the depth of Judaism, and he brings in his artwork many levels of depth of the text and of the interpretation of the meaning of the high holidays. Stained glass windows are now found in hundreds of Jewish synagogues around the world. Of course, the famous stained glass windows that Marc Chagall did for the famous synagogue in Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem, and other modern stained glass windows all over synagogues around the world. David Hillman was one of the first and important artists doing stained glass windows. And the question of, is this actually an original Jewish part of a synagogue? It's actually a good question because we find stained glass windows in other chapels and in other religious homes of prayer, not only in Judaism, of course. And this is the beauty of Judaism, that it always interacts with the environment around it, with the architecture that is done around it. And it has a interactive, flowing conversation and dialogue with things that happen around. So it's not something originally Jewish, but it was taken into many, many synagogues, and it became a tradition of its own.
In this week's Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Shimon would say in chapter 2, verse 13, "Be meticulous with the reading of the Shema and with all prayer. When you pray, do not make your prayers routine, but an entreaty of mercy and a supplication before the Almighty." As is stated, "For He, God, is benevolent and merciful, slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, and relenting of the evil decree." As always, it's been a pleasure having you on. From myself, Eitan Berger, and the whole team here at Simcha, have a great week and goodbye.